Superheroes. There are many things that can make a superhero stand out. Their costume, the personality, the powers, even their rogues gallery. But for me, what truly separates the goods from the greats is what we can take back into the real world. The lessons learned. While there are hundreds of cool superheroes out there are only a handful of iconic heroes that transcend the limitations of their medium into becoming household names. Some of those iconic stories in superhero media are built around universally applicable lessons as the crux of not just the standalone story, but the overarching narrative of the entire character. For example, let's talk about Superman. Some may believe Superman was only grandfathered in as one of the first superheroes ever, and those people would boil down Superman as some unbeatable stat brick, which misses the point of the entire character and what made him iconic in the first place. In essence, Superman is the story about an immigrant with incredible superpowers who chooses to defend the world that adopted him to the best of his unnatural ability. His greatest enemies envy his power and targets his specific weaknesses in attempts to topple this paragon of positive masculinity. No matter the challenge, he finds a creative and fantastic way to power through the problem. Even though Superman realistically stands unopposed physically, he only chooses to use his awesome powers to help people because that's just how he was raised. Superman's lesson is that absolute power doesn't necessarily have to corrupt absolutely. Anyone can choose to do better. You could further extend this to Spider-Man's with great power comes great responsibility. At the end of the day, he always answers the call to help people despite how much it could inconvenience him. Heck, nowadays, that threshold is vast. Recently, there's been a lot of talks about Mark Grayson, better known as... His story has hit a core within the zeitgeist in a way that has not been seen since the public reintroduction of the Avengers. Since Invincible is making the leap into iconism, many online have dissected the themes of the show extensively. From my many hours of watching video essays, the consensus of Invincible's theme is the exploration of moral nuance in a complicated world and the conversation around pragmatic solutions to world-ending threats. Mark is on his way to learning how the world really works and what it takes to truly become a great hero. Lessons from superhero stories are not necessarily one-off. Sometimes there are facets of the overarching theme learned throughout the journey. Take Batman. Overall, his story is about taking the pain he was inflicted as a child and not letting it define his entire life, turning it into something constructive so another child doesn't have to suffer what he has. In between that, he could learn the value of letting people in, the value of compromise, the power of knowledge, the value of trust, relearning how to love, etc. People online have said that in Season 3, Mark learned that in order to keep the people he has sworn to protect safe, blood needs to be spilled sometimes. It's not as though this thought process was unfounded. He killed Future Immortal to save a timeline yet to pass. He regrets not killing Angstrom to prevent the Invincible War, and he makes the conscious decision to kill Conquest in combat for the greater good. At the end of Season 3, Mark makes a vow to kill anyone who threatens the safety of those he holds dear. I've heard many online who've said that this is the shift in Mark's character that the last 3 seasons have been building towards. But as I go back through Mark's journey from what he was in Season 1 to the choices he made in Season 3, I have to get this off my chest. I don't think Mark learned what you think he did, or at least not yet. One thing we have to establish is how much of an anomaly the Mark we are following is. This Mark is in the overwhelming minority of genuinely heroic Invincibles. We as the audience are essentially watching What If Raditz joined the Z Fighters, a 1 in a million scenario where a runt villain ends up discovering a path to power beyond what's typically expected of him. Our Mark, the only good Mark, is by and large the strongest in any of the universes Angstrom pulled from. A situation built on a combination of circumstance and developing character. Since they're from other universes, we like to think that the variants of Mark shown off in episode 7 were completely disconnected versions from the Mark we know, but that could not be further from the truth.
I know you think I can't do this. Hit me and let me prove you wrong. Please, Dad. More of this! Come on! Holy shit! I'll kill the boy quickly.
Trying to help.
I told you to stay away from my family. Oh, you're out for revenge. Fine. Let's do this.
I didn't call you here to fight.
Because I'd win?
You got lucky.
Sure I did. Won't be enough! Even together, you're a fraction of my power! Stop it! I'm stronger and faster than you, and you know it! We need your help. What? No. You guys should be in prison.
Thought you superheroes cared about saving lives.
Don't even start with me. Come on. Taking you to prison. Swearing doesn't make you cool.
Every mix of traits displayed by the variants, from Lensless's masochism, Omni-Invincible's warped code, Hood's sense of physical superiority above other heroes, Mohawk's playful lack of sincerity, and Sinister's sadism, were all displayed and can be traced back as evolutions of moments our Mark has had starting as early as Season 1. So, what is the implication of our Mark having signs of being like his variants? If Mark has traits like his more evil counterparts, we can rule out Mark being independently different from them. He's just under different circumstances, whether it be his upbringing, the fights he's fought, the relationships he's built, or even the words Nolan chose. If 99% of the time Mark is an absolute bastard, then our Mark is fighting his own nature. He's actively choosing not to give in to his more violent tendencies. He's always holding back, and we just got a front row seat of what happens when he doesn't. This actually recontextualizes the lessons Mark has been learning in Season 3, from do what needs to be done to how much of myself am I allowed to be. This actually makes sense because Mark has been known to overcorrect on his stances all the time. He doesn't hold his father accountable like he should, so when he comes back to Earth, doubles down and makes it everyone else's problem. He accidentally killed a man he thought was stronger, so now he holds back too much, leaving himself more vulnerable than he should be. Now, Mark learned that he can kill villains for the greater good, and I have a feeling that he's going to overcorrect there too. What makes this even more interesting is that Mark's frame of reference for what not to be stems from how he sees his father Nolan. He says that he does not want to become just like Omni-Man, but whenever he declares that dogma, he's usually referring to his violent tendencies, as if that's the only thing wrong with Omni-Man, is that now he kills people. Remember, Mark looked up to Nolan's version of justice his entire life. While Debbie was the influence that won out in the end, Nolan still had a major influence on how Mark saw the world. While he may have lied about specifics, Nolan always taught Mark to see himself as a big picture hero, that Viltrumites were above certain mundane responsibilities, and Nolan would often take this to its logical extreme and not help people if he thought the thing that he was doing was more important, especially if that thing was Debbie. It's more important because anything outside of his scope is inconsequential, although he'd tell you otherwise. In that aspect, Mark is exactly like his father. Now, Mark is not a nihilist, but we still see that his upbringing left a similar impact into how he sees the world. Earlier on, Mark gets lectured by Cecil on not wanting to answer his emergency call to stop Dog Seismic. Mark initially wants to go to space to help the astronauts get to Mars safely, up until he learns that it heavily inconveniences his time. Mark spouts the same bigger picture spiel when initially refusing to help Titan. This results in the massive humbling that was Battlebee's can of whoop ass. Both times he is convinced by Debbie to do the right thing, but it's the fact that he needed convincing in the first place that makes me believe that he wouldn't turn out as a good guy if anything in this universe went differently. I bet people don't even remember that as far back as episode 7 of Season 1, Mark was 2 days away from retirement, since at that point, being invincible had inconvenienced him one too many times, because that's what he thought being like his father was. Heroism at his convenience. The only reason Mark joins Eve towards a distress signal is because he cares about Eve, not the potential person in distress. It's not until he sees his father in the grips of Hail Mary that he locks in. And it's not until he hears his father call Debbie a pet that he makes the choice to defend Earth. Yes, you heard me right. It is widely speculated among the Invincible fanbase that had Nolan chosen his words more carefully, paid Debbie better lip service, Mark would have joined him like every other variant. Because fuck us, am I right? Mark may have been raised as a human, but in the end, he still loved his father and had damn near forgave him by Season 3. Mark has shown time and time again he does not value human life like he says he does. Or if he does, then not above his inner circle. Go through the series. He does not pass the Bechdel test like you think he does. After the fight with his dad, every single one of Mark's heroics in Season 2 always comes with a huge asterisk. Mark is what I like to call the guilty savior. He doesn't do good because of its intrinsic value, but rather to clear the debt he feels he owed to Chicago. As we'll discuss later, Mark does not like owing debts. It makes him uncomfortable. And once they are cleared in Mark's mind, so too is Mark's obligation to give a thought. He doesn't want to be his father, so to prove it, he works for Cecil because his father would never do so. Escapades like Atlantis and Midnight City are assignments Cecil gave to Mark rather than Mark going on these adventures for the sake of doing good. You might point out that Mark saved the queen from a crustacean monster that they put on him when he didn't have to, but Mark had a personal obligation in the fact that Omni-Man is the sole reason the ceremony had to happen in the first place. He would not be there if he didn't think he had to. In fact, you could say the same thing about Thraxa, as Mark needed extra coaxing from William guilting him about his previous inaction to go save trillions. Think about that. It's not the trillions of lives alone that convinces Mark to go up there. Cecil, as a part of their agreement, tells Mark not to go, but Mark only listens to Cecil at his convenience. This sounds like he's learning to show initiative, to put people's lives first, but once he lands and learned that he'd been swindled by his father, he checked out immediately. Even if the Thraxans were in danger, it was no longer his personal obligation in his mind. That is, until he learns that his brother is in the mix. Now suddenly he's down to play ball. Sure, he feels bad that the Thraxans are dying, but he's not helping them for them alone. Mark did not learn a goddamn thing at this point. When the variants are having their meeting above Debbie's house, they only talk about people from their inner circles. Even the Marks that actively miss their friends and family do not register the bodies of civilians and heroes, because they naturally don't value their lives. As obvious as that is, the same goes for our Mark. I will never forgive Mark for taking, at minimum, 8 hours off the battlefield while his actively weaker variants ran rampant in the streets. You know, at first I thought this was a misstep by the writer, that this choice he made was out of character this late in the game, but now looking back, the signs were all there. Fightmaster and Dropkick, yes, I remembered their names, they sound like Transformers, came from the future for Invincible's health. They literally said it took the deaths of a lot of people to get them here, but Mark couldn't give less of a shit. He is with Bay right now. He had to be kidnapped and only starts rationalizing giving a rat's ass when he thinks the tyrant could be a Viltrumite, aka within his scope. Mark wants to take Titan to prison immediately and does not want to help him free Multipol, despite Titan explicitly explaining how much worse other people's lives are going to get if Mr. Liu isn't dealt with. Mark chooses bowling over confronting a villain, calling for Invincible specifically, citing the existence of other heroes as an excuse. In fact, this bitch does it again in the Invincible War, knowing damn well 90% of them can do fuck all. And remember, Omni-Man did the exact same thing.
Okay, now do something!
I'm on vacation with my beautiful wife. Let Cecil earn his paycheck.
Sure about this?
Yeah, I'm not ruining our date just because... What? I can take a night off. You know there's other heroes out there, right? You got every superhero on the planet fighting for you right now.
This is the cycle of inaction that rubbed off on Mark so deeply, he isn't even aware that it's a problem, and he isn't addressing it effectively yet. People think that he learned this with his declaration at the end of Season 3, but listen to his exact wording.
So if anyone else ever puts my family or anyone I love at risk, I won't hesitate to kill them.
If given the choice to save the world versus his loved ones, he's going to let the world burn. Even in the fight with Conquest, the mass murder of thousands isn't enough to motivate his adrenaline. But as soon as it's his loved ones, right? Okay, to be fair, I know he has less control over that, but it speaks to his inner nature that his higher strength isn't unlocked by danger in general. You don't understand how deep this goes. He can't even be genuine about other people's trauma correctly. When he tries to open up and relate to Powerplex, he makes it about himself because unconsciously he thinks he's the center of the universe. His sorrow should bring his ops comfort? Who the fuck do you think you are? You have no idea how much I was looking forward to the Invincible War. While I did not spoil myself on specifics, I knew that Conquest arrives not 24 hours later. In my head, I had the idea that Mark would have to participate in 3 straight days of sleep-deprived warfare, and that Mark would have had to fight and win against Conquest while already exhausted. Instead, Mark dips without a scratch on him, while Oliver is not even a year-old little brother, squabbled with at least 2 Mark variants. Mark didn't even beat 1! Despite now acknowledging the deaths of the Chicago incident, despite regretting his indecisiveness in the Invincible War, he only learned half the lesson people think he did. All they needed to do in the show was pull up a manga edit of Mark punching a variant's jaw off in between day 2 and 3, and we would not be having this conversation right now. Instead, the writers had to deliberately choose to benchmark, probably because it's more in character from what they've shown, which is insane to think about. 3 seasons of character development later, and Invincible is still only a hero when it's convenient for him or when he feels personally responsible. Despite what Mark thinks, I don't believe he would hate Sinclair as much if William wasn't one of his victims. In fact, it's only because of William that Mark even investigates Sinclair further rather than out of a sense of duty. He was not going to search for Sinclair otherwise, because the timing was inconvenient. Invincible did learn that some people have to die in order to protect others, but from what I've been observing, it feels like Mark learned this for his personal convenience down the road and not for the pure greater good. He's not proactive enough for me to believe that he learned the lesson. Rather, this is just another stepping stone in his journey, and he'll mature further down the road, I'm sure. So no, I do not think Mark got the correct takeaway from this season. He does not move with purpose. Instead, he lets things happen to him, only now he's going to put his back into it more, which is an improvement, but it's not the improvement everyone's talking about. Until he shows more initiative, more of a drive to protect people for its own sake, he's not going to be on par with the examples I showcased earlier. He can definitely get there, but I need to see Mark go out of his way to defend lives without either a personal connection to what's happening or needing one of his loved ones to convince a hero to hero. That day will definitely come, I'm sure, but I'm tired of seeing people think Mark is there already when he's blatantly not. Alright, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. YouTube uses these points to see if this video gets further past the algorithm, so if you like the content, please make sure it would help me out a lot. You can follow me on Instagram. Thank you for watching. Dark Dive out.